All right, so welcome everybody to another edition of Millennials Are Killing Capitalism Live. Um, Today, I'm super honored to welcome our guest to the show. It is always an honor and a privilege to speak with this individual. He was released from prison in 2020 after being held as a political prisoner in the US for almost 5 decades, and really 5 decades. I mean, it was like 49 years plus. Um, Jalil Muntaqim is a veteran of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army and the co-founder of the National Jericho Movement to free all political prisoners. Jalil is the author of We Are Our Own Liberators and Escaping the Prism, Fade to Black, and his essays have been published in several books, magazines, and newspapers. He is also, of course, a coordinating committee member of Spirit of Mandela Coalition, and we'll talk to him about some of all of that today, but we'll definitely get into some of the Spirit of Mandela work as well. You can get involved in the Spirit of Mandela Coalition through links we have below in the show description. So before I go any further, I'd just like to welcome you to the stage, Brother Jalil Muntaqim.
Thank you, my brother. Assalamu alaikum. Peace, paz, Baragani, Jambo, Ehrin, Guten Tag, or Fradin, Shalom, whatever your native language is, Hafadea, whatever your native language is, I wish you peace and solidarity.
Right on. Peace, peace. Yeah, so and welcome to the folks that are here with us today listening in, and I know folks will join throughout this conversation or catch the replay. Let's just get into it, welcome back. We've had you on a couple of times on our audio podcast platform now.
Yeah.
And it's great to have you in this video platform. We're always, as I said, honored and privileged to be in conversation with you. So there's a number of reasons that I wanted to have you on today to discuss recent events. One is obviously, as I mentioned, you're a veteran of Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, and those formations had solidarity in a real sense, meaning that they saw the struggles of Black people or New African people as connected to the struggles of Palestinians as well. And I wonder if you could just start there and talk a little bit about that connection, and any of the kind of material or ideological aspects of that connection that you would be interested in talking about.
I think it's very important for us to understand that in terms of our struggle, in talking about New African, the Black people struggle in the United States, there's always been tied with the oppressed all around the world. The Black Panther Party was very instrumental in creating a kind of internationalism in regards to our struggle. We established the international section of the Black Panther Party in Algiers, as for example. And in doing so, we had built out our relationships with other forces that are fighting against our colonialism, neo-colonialism, U.S. imperialism, British imperialism, Portuguese imperialism, English imperialism around the world. In fact, as a result of the work that we were doing and part of Black Panther Party, there were people who have organized the Black Panther Party resistance all around the world. There is the Gray Party, the Pink Party, the Dalit Party, the Faline Party, Fadahin Party, all of which was basically responsive to the goals and objectives of the Black Panther Party in fighting U.S. imperialism and colonialism. And so we had many of our members who had relationships or had met with, as for example, Al-Haj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, had met with Nasir, in developing a kind of understanding of the relationship of the president of Egypt at the time, established a relationship with our struggles. My dear comrade, brother Sekou Odinga, who did 33 years in prison, right? A veteran member of the Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army. He and others, Don Cox, D.C., they met with Arafat, in support of the Palestinian movement. And so we have a long relationship that we've had with the PLO and with the Palestinian Authority over the years. And we continue to build our relationship and their understanding of what they're going against and understand what we're going against. Why is that important? Because we equate Zionism very similarly to white supremacy, right? In terms of the operation and the principle from which they established a repressive regime against people of color. And so, in this instance, for them, it's the Palestinians, whether it be Black Palestinians or Arab Palestinians. They're African Palestinians or Indian Palestinians. If you're Palestine, if you're from Palestine and you're indigenous to the country, Zionists are opposed to your existence. And we have been in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Palestine from the very beginning.
Yeah, right on. I don't know if you want to talk about it at all now or if you wanted to wait a little bit later, but you did write an article, Support of Palestine is not anti-Semitic. I believe this was in response to some opposition to you, right? Wasn't that
Which
I can't
opposition
remember exactly.
not only to me, but it's also opposition to Alan Omar, Congresswoman Alan Omar, who was being attacked for challenging Congress' relationship with they have with AIPAC, the premier organization that functions as the lobbying force for the Zionist government of Israel. And so she was criticizing uh, the relationship, what she felt was a negative relationship between the United States and this APAC, and they challenged her, right, and for her opposition. And I felt there was a need for us to support her, and so I wrote this piece. I did my research, extensive research, and I wrote this piece. In regards to the support of Palestine is not anti-Semitic. One of the reasons why it's not anti-Semitic is because, in as much as the Ashkenazi tribe of the Hebrew or Jewish nation has claimed themselves to be Semitic, right? There is some contradiction, an argument in regards to whether that is true. But not only that, but the Semitic people are Indo-Asia Semitic people is more than just the Jews. Palestinians are also Semitic. And there are others in that whole general arena that they're fighting or the United States is opposed to, right? And talk about Syria and Iraq and Iran are also comprising of Semitic people. And so we have been duped in believing, indoctrinated into believing that only the Jews are Semitic, and that if you're opposing the Jews or supporting Zionism, that you're opposing Semitism. And that's not the fact. Right, support of Palestine is in fact in support of the Semitic people. And so we need to re-indoctrinate, re-understand, decolonize our thinking, and re-educate ourselves in regards to what is actually going on in that part of the country. It is more political than it is issues of ethnicity or even religion.
Yeah, and I think the other important aspect of that too, of course, is to say that not all Jewish people are Zionists, and a lot of Jewish people are opposed to Zionism. I mean, I was at the march this past weekend in DC with a lot of folks, and I've been out at Philly a couple times, and there are always large contingents of Jewish people who are opposed to the Zionist project, and certainly, opposed to genocide and the treatment of Palestinians under the Zionist regime. And so I think it's important also to say that it does not constitute by any means the whole of the Jewish people in the world that
I agree.
constitute
I
Zionists.
agree. I have a rabbi here who I call my rabbi. As soon as I got out, they was in support of my release, fighting for my release from prison. Rabbi Dora Settle, and I don't think that as a matter of fact, I know that she is not Zionist, right? And that she supports the freedom and liberation of and the independence of the sovereign nation of Palestine.
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about is that, some folks have equated there's an image, we used it as the image for this episode of, the on October 7th, which is just over a month ago now, A bulldozer broke down the border fence in Gaza. Khan Yunis, I think, is the name of the actual checkpoint. And a lot of people have equated this with the prison break, thinking about Gaza as it has been described as, the largest open air prison in the world. Others describe it as a concentration camp. I find that interesting also because the BLA had an analysis also of US prisons as concentration camps as well. But you grew up and, politically came of age at a time and within an organization among comrades who engaged in some quite daring acts of resistance. And, you're also someone who has been, demonized and punished by the powers that be in this country for your involvement in these formations and for your anti colonial politics. And so, how do you think about the significance of Operation All Aqsa Flood and the Palestinian resistance that has been going on in this moment?
Very good question. I've had some discussion with several people in regards to this area, this concern, and from different points of view. And one of the things that some people are arguing against is the issues of the Islam or Hamas, being an Islamic organization, a fundamentalist Islamic organization, and how that impedes or may impede what they call equality for other ethnic groups and organizations, etc. Right? My point to them is this: we have no say so as to how the Palestinian people decide they're going to free themselves, right? Only thing we can do is oppose the conditions of oppression, right? No matter who is the liberator, right? We understand that the Palestinian people have to decide for themselves how they're going to be liberated. And we cannot say how much they can tolerate in terms of organizing for themselves in that liberation. In this instance, particularly in Gaza, right, Hamas are the ones who are organizers. They are the resistors, right? They are the ones who are fundamentally opposing a system of oppression, right? Racial oppression. And so for us here in the United States, right, in Turtle Island, right, which is the original name of this country, right, we do not have the privilege, right, to determine who will be the liberating forces in Palestine. All right. If you are in fact a human rights advocate and you believe in human rights, then you have an obligation or responsibility to support all those entities who are engaged in the processes of liberation. Now, it is up for them, those people, in terms of liberating, to decide who will actually be governed or who will govern, or the process for which they will be governed. But in terms of deciding who should be the leaders, that is not responsibility. Now, that's not goal and objective, right? And it should not be. That is hubris on us to even think that we can determine who's going to be the liberators of the Palestinian people, okay? Or what kind of government they intend to construct and as part of their sovereignty, right? And so we have to recognize that for us, in regards to our struggle, what we engage in, let's confine ourselves to what needs to be done here in Turtle Island. And in so doing, we are actually supporting the struggles in Palestine. So why? Because we have a common enemy, right? Not only that we have a common enemy, right? We understand that the United States is supporting this outlaw nation, this outlaw government of Israel, right? We know that the United States is supporting them. And so militarily, financially, in every way you can think of, propaganda-wise, and any way you can think of, they support this Zionism, right? And so if we are anti-imperialists in our belief, right, then we need to be on the other side of that, right? And let the people of Palestine decide for themselves how they want to be governed. I tell people, listen, I went to last year, I went to Venezuela. A year before that, I went to Greece, right? And each of those countries, I informed them, I stated, right, that their freedom depends upon our freedom, right? And the reason why is because we are in the belly of the beast, right? We're in the belly of the beast. And what I did, I raised an analogy, all right, like an octopus. I said imperialism, U.S. imperialism is like the octopus, right? And they have its tentacles all over the world, right? Sucking up the resources, natural resources, and the labor of the people that they're colonized or have colonized or neo-colonized, right? Sucking up the resources. And at times, people in those countries decided they'd had enough. We're done. We're finished, right? And they cut off those tentacles, right? Cut off the tentacles of U.S. imperialism, right? All around the world. And what happened in time, they grow back, right? We saw that happen in Chile, as an example, when they overturned Salvador Allende, right, after relieving himself of U.S. imperialism, and they installed Pinochet, right, a fascist Pinochet. This is what this United States government does, right? And it supports the right wing, right? It supports fascism, all right? And so the world has to understand that empires do not collapse by external forces, right? History has been replete on that, right? Empires implodes, right? When people inside the empire are tired, right? They're done with their oppression, and they decided they want to overturn that system of government, right? Like in Rome or like in Greece, and etc. Okay, and so the same thing's going to apply here in the United States. So the brunt of the struggle, the brunt of repression, is going to be with us, right? And so we need to turn this idea of our support for people around the world, for the people around the world to support us in our struggle, because we are in the belly of the beast. And so their liberation, their freedom is dependent upon our liberation and our freedom, because we are the ones who ultimately have to decide that the system of imperialism, U.S. imperialism, the system of capitalist imperialism, the system of white supremacy has to be ushered into the dustbin of history, right? That's our goal and objective, right? And the world needs to understand that. And that means also that we're going to receive the brunt of fascist repression. We will, right? Because they'll do everything that's necessary to maintain the system of white supremacy and capitalist exploitation here in Turtle Island as well and around the world. And so when we understand that dynamic, what we are engaged with, it is extremely important that not only do we make affiliations of our struggle with those on the international community, but we have to build a united front here, right, amongst ourselves in the struggle to end the system that has colonized or has oppressed the world, continue to police the world in the eyesight and in the viewpoint, in the ideas of white supremacy and capitalist exploitation and imperialism. So that is important that we begin to understanding the transition and the movement that we are building here in the United States, and have those kind of correlation and understanding with those of fighting U.S. imperialism, Zionism, and other parts of the world.
Right on. And so obviously in this time, the other side of the coin in terms of, thinking about the Palestinian resistance is thinking about, what is being done currently to the mass population of Palestinians in Gaza. There's a lot of, good articles out there and statements and discussions, of course, that would say this constitutes genocide. There's no doubt that there's various war crimes and crimes against humanity that are occurring on a daily basis. And this also dovetails with the work that you and others have done with Spirit of Mandela, and your long history of organizing against genocide against Black people in the U.S. And also in solidarity and working alongside, thinking alongside Indigenous folks, Puerto Rican movements. In terms of repression and genocidal acts that they have faced as nationalities who are oppressed by the United States as well. Now, this is a situation where whatever solidarity we feel towards Palestinian people must be paired with an understanding that, as you just laid out, it is our tax dollars that are funding these bombs that are being sent over, that are bombing hospitals, bombing schools, committing war crime after war crime, and so on. And so, as someone who has a history of thinking about genocide, evaluating and developing the case for genocide through legal international law frameworks, how do you evaluate the current situation in Gaza through your framework, through how you would think about it?
Very good. First of all, let me make a point of reference that you made. You said our bombs. You said we are sending bombs. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
You understand? You understand what I'm saying? What I'm alluding to, right? It's the U.S. government, this corporate entity, this settler corporate colonial nation is sending these bombs, right? And so we oppose that, right? So I do not want to identify and include myself as being part of that process, okay? So we must make that distinction, right? That the American population, those who oppose Zionism, those who oppose white supremacy, those who oppose capitalist imperialism, right, are not in support of what the United States government is doing in our tax, so-called our tax dollars, right, and being applied in governing the empire and maintaining the system of the empire. Yes, in 2021, the International Tribunal, based upon the Spirit of Mandela campaign that we had organized at that time, found the United States guilty of genocides against Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. This is an esteemed body of international jurists. It was held on October 22nd to the 25th at the Malcolm X Bishop Bass Educational Research Center, the Education Memorial Center, I believe it was called, right? And as a result of that decision, we began the process of what we call building the People's Senate to remove ourselves from harm. And this is very similar to what's going on in Gaza, right? They are also engaging in trying to survive a system of genocides, but it's not it's not a kind of genocide that we found in World War II when the Germans was murdering the Ashkenazis, the Jews in Germany, right? This is a slow kind of continuum of decimating and annihilating a people, right? And we find the same similar issues that are confronting Black, Brown, and Indigenous people here in the United States. This slow processes of eliminating, decimating a people, particularly Black people in this country. And so we find our relationships or our understanding of the systems to be similar, right? And the processes from which genocide is being implemented. According to the 1948 declaration or treaty and opposing the Convention on Genocides, it says the murder or killing of people in whole or in part, right? So that means you have to just wipe them all out at one time, right? But you can eliminate their capacity to strive and build and be reproductive in a processes of elimination. Okay, and that's what they're doing with the genocides of Gaza, right? The genocides of the Palestinian people, a long process, at least since 1948. They've been engaged in this process of decimating and annihilating the Palestinian people and removing them from the land, as they did with the indigenous people of America, right? Moving them. Well, listen, my great grandma was a Muskogee Creek native, a Native American out of Alabama, right? And as you well know, the Muskogee Creek and the Cherokees was on the Trail of Tears, right? They ushered them away from their national homeland of Georgia and Alabama and moved them into Oklahoma and decimated them. Very similar to what's going on in Gaza, right? Removing them from Gaza and taking them to the borders and to uninhabited areas where they're going to die, okay? From starvation, from lack of water, from dehydration, from the whole dynamics of medical neglect and medical abuse, not providing the resource that they need to strive as a people, as a whole people, and that's genocidal, okay, in whole or in part. And we find the same thing that's going on here in the United States. The Black population has not grown in the last 50 years, right, from 11 to 13% in the last 50 years. Our population is stagnant. All other ethnic populations in Turtle Island has grown, right? Has evolved and grown, not the Black population. Why? Because we live in a system of white supremacy. White supremacy, you got to have a people who are considered. What happened?
Your screen froze for a second.
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
I think you're back.
They have to have a people that they consider to be inferior, who they identify as animals, right, or less than human. Very similar to what the Zionists are doing to the Palestinian people, right? That's what they're doing to them, calling them animals, calling them less than human, subhuman, right? Very similar to what they did here, to continue to do here with us. in Turtle Island. And so we can find the relationship, the parallel relationships are direct, right? And there's no if and buts about that. And so for me, for us, and the work that we're doing here in the United States in support of the struggles in Palestine is that we're building our movement for our own liberation, independence, and freedom, right? And therefore, we are in sync, right, with our brothers and sisters in Palestine as we build towards our own liberation. Now, again, I make this point explicitly clear. We are in the belly of the beast, right? And so it is essential that we call on the people around the world to support our struggle, right? If they want real freedom and independence and liberation, right? Because we are the ones going to have to do the bulk of the real fighting, right? The bulk of the real resistance in order to end this system, end this empire, right? It has to be, the empire has to implode, right? It won't explode, it has to implode. And we have to understand the meaning of that. And so for us, the support and building, another thing, another thought that came apart, one of my comrades, Jalil Muntaqim, who's the chairman of the National Jericho Movement, right? He found a passage somewhere, right, where the stated says that we are not freeing the Palestinians are freeing us, right? That hit hard in my thinking, right? Because what is happening is that what they're going through is informing the world of what's going on in terms of the systems of oppression, right? So as we see them being slaughtered, being annihilated, we know that this is what the possibilities of what is going to happen in other parts of the world and what's going to happen here. All right. And so for us, it is important that we begin the process of defending ourselves, of creating conditions of security to defend ourselves. That means we have to reawaken our people to the ideas that we are confronting systems of genocides. Right. And that's what we're doing today with the Spirit of Mandela campaign and building the People's Senate. Right. That is a golden objective, right? To ensure our people understand that the United States has been found guilty of genocides by an esteemed international body. Listen, if China was found guilty of genocides and the treatment of the Uyghurs, as an example, right? It's been all over the world. It's been known all over the world, okay? Propagated all over the world, right? China found guilty by an esteemed body of international jurists associated to the United Nations. Why not here, right? There is silence on it. Silence. And so for us, it's important that we bring this information into the international community, let them know that the United States is no longer the harbinger or the moral equivalent of everything right in regards to our humanity, right? In regards to the moral, they have no moral standing in terms of human rights anymore, right? As a result of the decision of the international jurors finding the United States guilty of genocides against Black, brown, and indigenous people in this country. All right. And so the world needs to know that. And they need to charge the United States. You cannot charge any other country of engaging in the process of genocide, engaging in the process of ethnic oppression, right, without having the four fingers pointed back at you at the Turtle Island. Okay. And that's our goal and objective. We have to inform the world the United States has been found guilty of genocide against Black, brown, and indigenous people, and we are engaged in the process of freeing ourselves from a system of genocide, from a system that has been engaged in the process of genocide. So the Palestinian people are lessons for us. The struggles of the Palestinian people are lessons for us, right? How they continue to have a staunch belief, right, in the divine, because I am Muslim, they are Muslims, right? In God, and I can say something about that too in a minute, right? If you don't mind, right? In God or in the proper name Allah, right? They still believe in Allah as they continue to be injured and hurt and harmed, right, and destroyed, right? They can maintain their faith. Okay, that's important, right? Now let me say something about that. The other day I was doing some research, and I wanted to find out what was the original language of Jesus Christ. Right, this I'm saying this about the Christians, right? And I found out that the original language of Jesus Christ is Aramaic, right? So I went to find out what the language of Aramaic, and I went to go find out what is the name of God in the Aramaic language. And you know what I found out? It said Allah. Allah. Right? Then I went to ask for the Jewish Hebrew, find out the language of the Hebrew religion, and it's Elohim. Right? The name of God. And for the Muslims, it's Allah. So if you go do the study, you'll find out that they use the same derivative of the same language, of the same name. So there's only one, right? And it's the thing that we have to understand, how we have been indoctrinated into divisions, right? In dividing the world for the purpose of their exploitation, okay? And so for me, it is important that we begin to heal the planet, but we cannot heal the planet until we rid ourselves of these systems of exploitation, these systems of divisions, these systems of colonialism and imperialism, right? And that is going to be a traumatic process because of the way we have been indoctrinated in believing that white supremacy and Turtle Island is the best system on the planet, which you know is false. It's a lie, right? It's based upon the criminalization of a people, right? Criminalization of Black people, particularly, right? When they created laws, for instance, in Palestine, there are 60 different laws of segregation. 60 different laws that the Palestinians have that's different from the actual Jewish community of who are occupying Palestine, right? These are laws like the Jim Crow laws of the United States, right? That was imposed upon Black people in this country. 60 different laws. So we can see how the U.S. has imposed or have their methodology of oppression applied in Israel. The same things that they've done here in the United States, in Turtle Island, against Black people, they're applying those same ideas and principles, or the Zionists are applying the same ideas and principles over there in Palestine. So how can we not relate our relationships and build our understanding that we are fighting against a common enemy, a common force of repression, right? We have to. And so for us, Spirit of Mandela, and people can go to spiritofmandela.org/People Senate and learn about how we are building towards the People Senate in our efforts to support Palestine. See, our active support of Palestine is to build liberation for ourselves. See, that's our active support of Palestine, right? It's not the march, right? It's not a demonstration. It's building liberation.
Right on. Yeah, I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit more about the People's Senate, because I know that that's a step in that process from your perspective. So just talk a little bit about the organizing work you're doing there through Spirit of Mandela.
Yes, thank you for the question. I alluded to it a couple of times in my diatribe, in my monologue. I can't help it, man. I'm passionate about this because I'm living it.
It's so funny as you say that. This was one of the comments when you froze there, is they said he's going too hard for YouTube. So that's people are enjoying it in the chat for sure.
Going too hard for YouTube. I have a block on YouTube. That's how you feel. You know what I mean? Go to Instagram or some other form. I make my own form. I don't know. But going too hard. Really? Okay. If I'm going too hard, then they need to step up their game, man. That's how we talk.
That's right.
Okay, that's all.
That's right.
So the People's Senate, we have decided, Spirit of Mandela Coalition has decided, as a result of the conviction of the United States being found guilty of genocide against Black, brown, indigenous people on 5 charges. Let me explain these 5 charges. The 5 charges are mass incarceration, right? Police killing of our people, state-sanctioned terrorism, health inequities, environmental racism, and the existence of our political prisoners. And these are the charges that we brought during the International Tribunal, at which the United States was found guilty by the international jurors. 9 esteemed members of the international jurors from around the world, right, found the United States guilty on those 5 charges. So we decided, as a result of being found guilty of genocide, that we had in fact been subjected to genocide Black, brown, indigenous people in this country, that we have to remove ourselves from harm, right? And how do we do so? We have to build new forms of governing. New forms of governing. Let me make another point in regards to this for your audience. The United States is a corporation, right? Many people do not understand or know what it means to have a governing systems. The United States is a corporation. According to 28 USC 3002 15A, it states United States is a federal corporation. Know that. Okay, so when you pledge allegiance to America, blah, 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 you're pledging allegiance to a corporation. Know that. All right. 20 years ago, the United States Supreme Court, in a case called People's United, I believe it was, or Citizens United.
Citizens United, yep.
Citizens United, right? Made a decision. I don't know how they came to this, but they made a decision that corporations are people. Corporations are people. How do corporations become people? Corporations are people, according to the law. So now when they say for the people, by the people, when the U.S. corporate government say for the people, by the people, they're not talking about us. They're not talking about sentient flesh and blood human beings. They're talking about other corporations. That's the only way that the United States Supreme Court can come to that conclusion, to come to that decision, that corporations are people. And understanding that the governing system that we are living under is, in fact, a corporation. And so what they're doing, they govern other corporations. And this is the reason why that around the world, the system of governing supports the proliferation of U.S. corporations. Right? They support U.S. corporations. That is their people. Right? We are slave laborers in this corporate entity where they reap exorbitant profits from our labor. From our labor. Let me make this other point implicitly clear. There are 740 billionaires in the United States in a population of 330 million. 740 billionaires, right? It was accumulative wealth of $6.999 trillion. Some say is even greater than that. All the wealth of Western Europe, accumulated wealth of Western Europe, is in the hands of 740 individuals and corporations. Right? And we're complicit in their hoarding of wealth. Right? They're hoarding their wealth, and we're fighting for the crumbs off their table. Let's understand that. This is the capitalist system for which hoarding of wealth is good. Well, we know throughout all religions, right? One cares Judaic, Christians, Muslims, Hindu, I don't care what it is, Taoism, whatever belief system is, that belief system states that hoarding of wealth is a sin. It's a sin. It's morally repugnant, the hoarding of wealth, right? Where a few will live lavishly to the detriment of the many. To the detriment of the many. This is the system that we live in. This is the system that we are complicit because of our silence, our failure to fight back, to demand equal distribution of the wealth, right? Our failure to do so is complicit. And therefore, they continue to believe themselves rightfully capable of exploiting the planet to the detriment of the world. They're killing the planet. They are actually killing the planet, knowingly killing the planet. And we're silent. There's no major environmental movement in this country demanding these corporations pull out from petroleum use, as an example, right? Creating alternative energy sources. We need a major national movement to do that, right? In order to save the planet. What's going on in Cop City? They want to deforest a part of Georgia to build Cop City. Deforest. And we know that forest makes oxygen, right? So they're depleting the capacity of creating oxygen, particularly in Georgia. And we're silent. We're not fighting back, right? So we're complicit in our own oppression. So for us, it is extremely important that we begin to devise new means of governing, alternative systems of governing. And that's what the People Center is about, right? People Center, we're going to organize assemblies in various regions around the country, and out of those assemblies, the people's assemblies, right, we're going to establish a representative people's senate, right, and those people's senates will devise national campaigns, which across the country we can organize towards. National campaigns across the country we can organize towards and build a movement, a serious movement opposing a system of racial oppression, right, and financial or economic exploitation of us as workers, right? So we're engaging the unions. We're engaging activist communities across the country. We're engaging the college community. We're engaging all forces to understand that this system of governing has not been to our better benefit, right, of people in this country. And so that's the reason why we're building the People's Senate. All right, we have to remove ourselves from a system that's based upon the ideas of corporate greed, right, and not for the benefit of our common humanity. Does not serve the benefit of common humanity.
Absolutely. And I'm going to do one more question, and then there's a couple of questions from audience members that I will share with you. One that always is important, I think, to touch on when we're in conversation is the work that you've always been a part of, even when you were still a political prisoner yourself, which is organizing around political prisoners, prisoners of war in the United States. There was a good segue earlier. I should have grabbed it when you did it, but when you brought up your own relationship with Islam, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think it was Jamil Abdullah Alamin, H-Rap Brown, who is still at this point a political prisoner, who was one of the people that was instrumental in your own conversion to Islam. And we have a record of his up there on the corner. I don't know if people could see that, but anyways, I didn't plan that segue and I didn't execute it very well. But anyways, if there's any updates or important things that you would like to bring up to folks around political prisoners today, let me know. And I did see this looks like the link for We Are Our Own Liberators, and I will also share that with folks. This is the recent reissue of a central text of yours over my corner. This is what it is. We Are Our Own Liberators, which is your selected writings, and then there's also another one, which is Escaping the Prism, Fade to Black. But yeah, go ahead, say some things about political prisoners.
The National Jericho Movement and the Northeast Political Prisoners Coalition have been working together in terms of building campaigns to fight for the liberation and freedom of our comrades who are still inside. Why is that important? Because our political prisoners represent the best of us. I'll make that point explicitly clear. Our political prisoners represent the best of us. Why? Because they are the ones who is willing to sacrifice their liberty and their life, right, in the struggle against systems of oppression, right, racial and class oppression. They're the ones who wanted to put their all in all, right, their ultimate sacrifice, right, for our freedom, for our liberation, our independence. We cannot betray that. We have an obligation to continue to fight for them as they have fought for us, right? And so we have Jamil Alamin, right, who has been in prison over 20 years now, I think 26 years now, right, who the government know is innocent of the charges. How do we know we're innocent of the charges? Because somebody confessed on national TV, said, I am the one who committed the crime, right? And meets the description of the person who has been identified, who they allege had committed the killing of those police officers, right? Not Jamil. They know that, but they won't release him. Veron Zabaros, another comrade, right? Former member, a veteran member of Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army. He was to be released from prison, was being escorted out of the prison system with the superintendent. And as he reached the door to be released, the superintendent received a phone call from Anthony Gonzalez, who was the attorney general at that time, and told him, don't release him. After the parole board granted him release. That's 10 years ago. He's still in prison. We're fighting for his release. Yes, he should be released, right? There's Kamal Siddiqui, another comrade, former veteran member of Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, did time for his activities as a member of Black Liberation Army, was released from prison, was at home with his children and building his new life. And the FBI came to him and said, listen, we want you to set up Assata Shakur. Why him? Because he is the father of Assata Shakur's daughter, Kukuya. All right? They wanted him to set up Assata for her to be captured. He refused. You know what they did? They gave him a bogus charge and sent him in prison. Right now, he is suffering from all types of illness and diseases, as is as has Imam Jamil Al-Amin and Veronza Barrows. And there are many, many others, right? Ed Poindexter from the Nebraska 3, right? He had his leg amputated and did not inform his family that they were going to take him to this kind of surgery. No one knew about it until after it was done, right? He needs to be released from prison. Okay. And so for Jericho Movement, if anybody don't know, go to the National Jericho Movement, the National Jericho Movement.com, and learn more about the work that we're doing in regards to support of our political prisoners. Or go to the Northeast Political Prisoners Coalition and learn more of the work that they're doing in building our campaign for the release of our PPs and political prisoners. And this is part of our struggle in regards to building the People's Senate, right? They're raising these issues of the means by which this governing corporate entity represses our movement, suppresses our movement, right? And use forms of repression like COINTELPRO as an example, or Nukill, or Chesarob, right? These are agent programs for the purpose of repressing movements, destroying movements. They use every type of tactic that they use to destabilize a nation to destroy the Black Panther Party. Every kind, from assassinations to infiltrations, provocateurism, poison pen letters, media denigration, whatever you want, whatever they use to destabilize the nation, they use those same tactics against the Black Panther Party to destroy our movement. Okay, and so we really have to step up our game in terms of how we not only secure our struggle, but build our struggle. And for us, it's important that we build our struggle towards a mass and popular movement, right? In my book, We Are Our Own Liberators, I got a chapter in there talking about the mass and popular movement, how to build a mass popular movement, right? And that's what the People's Center is going to do. We're going to build a mass and popular movement. So that's the only way we're going to be able to survive the systems of repression. Now, let me ask one other point in regards to the system of repression, what they're planning, right? And what we have to start be preparing for, right? Cop cities. They're building cop cities across the country, right? It's not only in Atlanta. Right? I think there's seven other places around the country that they're building cop cities. And what is the purpose of building cop cities? Building cop cities, they're making replica cities for the purpose of training police officers across this country in urban warfare. Specifically, in urban warfare, training law enforcement across this country in urban warfare. Why? Who are they going to fight against? Us. Against us. They're preparing to fight against us. But let's take that back. Let's roll that back a little bit, just a little bit, right? If they know on their planning board the necessity for engaging in urban warfare, then they also know the reasons for that. Why the people are going to rise up? So why not address those issues? Why not address the issues of economic deprivation, right? Health inequities, right? Mass incarceration, right? The police killing and state-sanctioned murder of people. Address those issues. If you address those issues, there won't be no rising up. And there won't be no rising up. Equal distribution of wealth in this country, right? Address those issues. If you address those issues, there won't be no rising up. There will be no need to develop urban warfare. But what is the situation? They're not going to. They are not going to. They have this on the planning board. So they understand that they are going to continue to create conditions of repression, of oppression in this country. So they continue to reap exorbitant profits from our labor. Okay? And so if we understand that, if we have the vision, if we can see what they see in terms of what the future of this country, then we gotta start getting prepared. We gotta start getting ready to defend ourselves from a system of repression, from fascism. That's what they're building towards, right? As the empire begins to lose resources from around the world, right? In order to maintain the type of profits that they have to ensure that we in Turtle Island, the population of Turtle Island, are silent, right? That they cede to the systems of their own exploitation, okay? And that is the problem that we are going to be confronting in the years coming. We need to start preparing to defend ourselves against the overt fascism that they are already on board planning and that we are fighting against, particularly in Atlantic City or Atlanta or Georgia, right, and other parts of the country against these cop cities. It is scary. It is frightening. It's horrifying what they have on the planning board, particularly in regards to Black people, brown people, and indigenous people in this country. It's genocidal. It's genocidal.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have some questions from the audience that I want to bring up. These are probably, quicker questions to respond to, but that folks wanted your thoughts on them, so I'm sharing a couple of them. So, one was, what do you make of Linda Thomas Greenfield, Lloyd Austin, and Corinne Jean-Pierre, who uphold these diabolical policies? Just, I think, for context, for folks who don't know, Linda Thomas Greenfield is the U.S. ambassador to the UN. She's a Black woman. Lloyd Austin is the Secretary of Defense currently. He's a Black man. And Corinne Jean-Pierre is the White House secretary who's also, or press secretary, I should say, who's also a Black woman. So I imagine that this is a question about, sort of neocolonialism here, but I wanted to give you the floor to respond to your thoughts on it.
The same thing I think about any other white person who is aligned to the system of imperialism, capitalist imperialism and exploitation. Keep in mind, listen, people, we have lived in a system of white supremacy. We've been navigating a system of white supremacy for over 400 years. Navigating a system of white supremacy for over 400 years, right? You don't think that Black people have been traumatized? Traumatized, severely traumatized, right? A people who have been brought here enslaved in chains, right? At least since 1619, right? And has suffered trauma over trauma over trauma over trauma for centuries. You think we're not a traumatized people? Of course we are. All right? And so for many of us, we don't even understand our own Africanness, our own identity. Right? Because we've been named everything except for children of God. Okay? And so our mentality, our thinking is that of a colonized people. Colonized mentality, right? For many of us. That's why we got to go in the process of decolonization. Or we're building decolonization as part of the People's Senate, right? And so these individuals who are assimilationists, they are assimilated into the system of white supremacy. And unfortunately, the civil rights movement facilitated that, right? This idea of integrating, right? Without having certain a reckoning of chattel slavery, African chattel slavery in this country. There's been no real reckoning of that. There's been no reparations. There's been no repairing of the damage that's been done. So we have damaged people, right? Damaged, their thinking is damaged. They're supporting a system of white supremacy to their own detriment because they've been colonized. So that's my feelings, my thinking of those individuals. They are assimilationists. They have a neo-colonized mentality, right? These mayors, these Black mayors and governors and et cetera, who are upholding a system of white supremacy and blackface and brown face and etc. Okay, so for us, we're in the process of decolonizing ourselves, and it's going to be strong. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, right? Because we have to erase centuries of indoctrination, of inferiority, right?
Along those lines, I think, someone asked the process of I assume this is in relation to the Spirit of Mandela and the genocide tribunal
Yeah.
and the verdict.
Mhm.
I think somebody's just trying to understand a little bit more of, you know, like how that case was made, who it was made to, and who helped to do that. Like, what was that work like?
Very, very good. You can go to the International Tribunal .org and go to spiritmandela.org, and have all the information there, including the hearings of the tribunal. They're all there. Again, there are 5 issues that we raised to the international jurors. Sekou Odinga, Jamil Adamine, Jihad Abdul Momet, Matt Myers, were organizers. Dekwi Siddiqui, Yasmin, Majid, Aisha Muhammad, are coordinating members of TAG, Harmon, Ashaki Binta, are all members of the coordinating committee of the Spirit of Mandela Coordinating Committee and the coalition of various other organizations have engaged in this process as a result of the October 22nd to the 25th International Tribunal that determined that they had international jurors. The names of international jurors, their finding, all of that is in the Spirit of Mandela website. So go to the website and you can learn everything, including if you want to YouTube it. But if you can go to the website, you can find the tribunal hearings, all the hearings on each of the 5 issues that we raised. It was very well organized. It was established by a profound internationalist, and the jurors themselves from South Africa to Puerto Rico to Germany, Britain, were representative of the international jurors. And so go there, learn the information. It's all there. Amilcar Cabral says, he said, claim no easy victory, tell no lies, claim no easy victories, right? We are not telling any lies, and we're not making any claims that it was easy. It was very difficult, but we were successful. Now, let me make this point also clear. This is not the first time the issue of genocide has been raised here in Turtle Island. December 17th, 1951, the great W.D. Du Bois, some of you may have heard of him, the great Paul Robeson, some of you may have heard of him, and the great William Patterson were the first to bring the charge of genocides to the United Nations, an effort to bring to the United Nations. And at that time, the FBI prevented Paul Robeson from leaving the country to go to Switzerland to present, right? And William Patterson, who was able to make it over there, they tried to prevent him from coming back to the United States, right? But not only that, in 1965, El-Haj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, he spoke on the issues of genocides, that we are confronting genocides. In 1968, Martin Luther King, he raised the question that we engaged in the process of confronting the issues of genocides in this country. And so we have a continuum, a struggle of efforts to raise the question of what's going on with Black people, brown people, indigenous people in this country. And we finally had a victory. And what I mean by that we got a verdict. But Paul Robeson was unable to, and W.D. Du Bois was unable to get a verdict. We got a verdict. And the verdict was guilty against the United States and for the commission of genocide. Now, make this also a point. 18 U.S.C. 1091, right? U.S. law. 18 U.S.C. 1091 is the United States treaty to the 1948 Convention on Genocides, federal law. So what we're saying is the United States is against their own law. They're violating their own law. All right, so now we're in the process. We're negotiating and discussing with the National Lawyers Guild for the process of filing a lawsuit against the United States for the engagement of violation of their own laws and violation of international law, human rights treaties to the United Nations. And so we're in the process of trying to build that out, and we're going to use that. If we can successfully get this lawsuit filed, that lawsuit will have the impact very similarly or even greater than the impact of Kansas versus Board of Education, the Brown verdict on education, the desegregated education. We're going to move for this case to be a rallying cry, an organizing cry for organizing and understanding the nature of genocides in this country and how we must remove ourselves from harm. And so for those who are interested, want to learn more, go to the spiritofmandela.org. All the information is there, including the hearings of the tribunal.
Right on, yeah, and that's in the show notes in the description down there. The link is there. I also put a link in the chat. I just want to quickly say to people, this particular link here is for the We Are Our Own Liberators third edition. If folks are interested in picking up that book, definitely recommend it. Here was a question. What can today's young people and college students do to build security amongst themselves as they face immense repression in their struggles for liberation? As you teach us, this has been particularly heightened in, I mean, it's always the case that student organizing is not welcome on campus, but it's been particularly heightened in recent weeks where people have been called, superior supporters of terrorism for holding vigils for Palestinians, or called again anti-Semitic for saying, having anti-Zionist marches or anti-Israel discussions and things like that. And so I'm just interested if you have any thoughts on that to share.
Absolutely. I remember one time that Al-Haj Shabazz, Malcolm X, I think he gave a presentation in Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania, right? And as he was leaving, I think this is in his book, the autobiography of Malcolm X. And as he was leaving, a young white college student came up to him, a woman, female, came up to him and asked him, what can she do, right? And he looked at it and said, nothing, and walked away. Later, as he evolved and grew, he recognized that he made an error, right, in telling her to do nothing, okay? What college students need to do, go back home and understand and organize in their communities, right? Not only on campus, but in their communities, right? They got to go, particularly European Americans, right? They got to go back to their community, go back to their Aunt Bubba or Uncle Bubba and Aunt Jenny and tell them to put down the Confederate flag, right? They got to go and during the Turkey Day holiday, Indigenous Peoples Day, and Turkey Day holiday, they need to sit at the dinner table and raise these questions of white supremacy. What does that mean for us, right? Where is our common humanity, right? You have to challenge your community in regards to the issues of white supremacy and capitalist imperialism. That's what you can do. You organize in the college campus. Organize in the college campus, right? How did SDS come into existence? They organized my great comrade, David Gilbert, right? Who was a founding member of SDS, right? A former member of SDS and the Weather Underground, right? See, we have white resistors, right? Revolutionaries, right? The original Rainbow Coalition came from who? Came from Fred Hampton in Chicago.
Black Panther Party, yeah.
The Black Panther Party, right? Organizing the Patriot Party, right? And the Young Lords and the Black Panther Party, building a Rainbow Coalition before it was incorporated or co-opted by Jesse Jackson, right? And so we know that we have alliances and organizing. Listen what you do, right? For all the people on college campuses, right? Organize a panel discussion, right? Invite myself, invite Jihad Abdul Muhammad, invite Sekou. Unfortunately, Sekou is hospitalized right now. And if you can, go to his website and learn how you can support Sekou Odinga. We're doing a fundraiser for him at this point in time so he can get the kind of rehabilitation that he needs. But nonetheless, organize forums on your college campus, right? I just had I made a presentation at the University of Michigan, right? I made a presentation at UC Davis, okay? Uh, Bring us on board, right? Let's talk about these things. Let's build towards the people-centered, all right? And if you can do that, build a people-centered committee, right, on campus. Let's organize on that level. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's up. That's in the chat. So, and I'll add it to the show description afterwards. But yeah, there's a GoFundMe for Sekou Odinga. It's the title of it is just immediate support, immediate relief support for Sekou Odinga. So if you just Google that, it will come right up. And yeah, we've contributed to it, plugged it a couple of times on our audio podcast, but also encourage people to support Baba Sekou in this time. One of the people who has made intense, incredible sacrifices throughout his life for Black people, for his people, for all of us, you know, and so definitely should support him. Yeah.
Hopefully soon a book will come out. His story will come out in a book form, and people will be amazed. You know, we call him the Black Spider-Man of the movement for his way of eluding capture on a couple of occasions. Sekou was one of the individuals who created or helped establish the international section of the Black Panther Party in Algiers. And he was one that met some of our liberation forces in Africa during that period of time, including Yasser Arafat. Right, there are pictures of him in D.C. and I think Eldridge with Yasser Arafat. You know, and listen, we are heroes and sheroes that we don't even recognize, that we don't give homage to, you know, in our struggle, and we should. People who has, again, sacrificed life and liberty in building a campaign and a movement, right? And this is why we have to support our political prisoners. It is imperative that we do so. Because supporting our political prisoners is supporting ourselves, is supporting our movement, is supporting the best of us, right? Essentially. Yeah, so college campuses, if you want to learn more, build a people-centered committee on your college campus. Invite us to come and speak on the issues we want to that we know that it's imperative that we begin the process of re-educating ourselves, decolonizing our mentalities and our thinking, and building towards a national liberation and independence for all of us. To remove ourselves from this corporate settler colonial government that we have been aligned to, had allegiance to, right? We have to end this allegiance, this unholy allegiance to this system of capitalist imperialism.
Right on. This was, I think, when you were talking about the People's Senate. Someone asked if Frolinon is the same thing. Some folks might not know what Frolinon is, but yeah, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I'm glad for the question. I'm glad someone's sagacious enough, wise enough to even bring up that question. In my book, We Are Our Own Liberators, there's a chapter called The National Strategy for Frolinon, Front for the Liberation of the African Nation. The name evolved from Frolimo, right, which is the Front for the Liberation of Mozambique. All right. The People's Senate is our efforts to build a massive popular movement. Right, a massive popular movement to support the goals and objectives of our struggle, the sovereignty of sovereign nations, like those of our indigenous sovereign nations, who every treaty that they have committed with this corporate government has been broken. Right, understand we have sovereign nations within the territorial island, within this country. Right, well, they're unable to live up to their nationhood, right, their national identity and organization and governance, right, as sovereign nations because of the system of white supremacy and capitalist imperialism. Very similarly to the Palestinians, unable to live according to their goals and objectives as sovereign nation, right, are being repressed from doing it by the system of Zionism, this racist system of Zionism. Okay, so for us, Black people in this country, right, If you don't understand the history of resistance, because it's not taught, right? You have to go and research. We are also a sovereign nation. Now, let me make this point especially clear in terms of Black people in this country. In 1865, when they ended chattel slavery of African people, right, there was never an opportunity for those African people to decide whether they want to go back to Africa, whether they want to become citizens of this country, this corporate entity, or whether they want to establish their own nationhood, right, and become sovereign nation themselves, right? There was a point in time where that was evolving, right? According to Field Order Number 15, if no one knows about it, go to Google it, Field Order Number 15 by General Tecumseh Sherman, right, which is an executive order that permitted from St. John South to the Floridan basins, North Carolina, South Carolina, St. John South to the Floridan basins would be inhabited by emancipated Africans, right? And as a process of the emancipated Africans governing themselves, they built what they call freedmen bureaus. And the freedmen bureaus was essentially the administrative organizing of a nation, a new nation, right? It's building the foundation of a Black nation here, okay? Unfortunately, as a result of the Hayes-Tilden Compromise, Buchanan B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden, and that struggle for presidency came up with a compromise, the Hayes-Tilden Compromise. And the Hayes-Tilden Compromise was this, because Hayes won the college electoral votes, while Tilden won the popular votes. And that's usually why they had to compromise in terms of how they're going to govern. And so Tilden told Hayes, listen, I will withdraw, you become the president, but in doing so, you have to withdraw the Yankee troops from the territories that were defending the nascent government or African nation. Nascent African nation was being built, right? And so Hayes agreed, and they withdrew the Yankee troops. And what happened after that? 100 years of terror, of lynching. 100 years of lynching. Why? Because the Confederate became who? Ku Klux Klan. It's Ku Klux Klan. And began a process of 100 years of lynching and terror. That was the first migration out of the South into the North and the West, right? Because of this compromise between two white supremacists, right? In opposition to the establishment of a African sovereignty in Turtle Island for the continual oppression of these African people, right? Black people in this country. And so we're moving in the process of reestablishing what we call a New Africa, right? In 1968, there was a group of 500 revolutionary nationalists, Black revolutionary nationalists, who met at Reverend Franklin, who was the father of Aretha Franklin, right? Who was a Garveyite, right? Aretha Franklin's father was Garveyite in Detroit. And so they met there, and they decided at some point in time, moving towards building what we call the Provisional Government of New Africa, right? So that's what we're doing. The Black Belt South. The Black Belt South is still where the majority of African people lives today, reside in the Black Belt South. That is Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and let's see, Georgia, Alabama.
It's the Carolinas too, right?
Yeah, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Majority of Black people live there today, right? And there's been an exodus of Black people moving back to their original homeland. There's our original homeland, okay, in Turtle Island. And so we're going back to reassert our capacity to organize for our own national liberation and independence. And Front for Liberation of the New African Nation is the organization that I'm proposing for building a national front for the liberation of African people and for establishing our own sovereignty. We have to remove ourselves from the system of superiority, white superiority over Black inferiority, right? has been imposed upon us. Okay, let me make this point explicitly in terms of history. Right after the 13th Amendment, they came up with the 14th Amendment. Right, 14th Amendment. Right, it's naturalization and due process amendment. Okay, we were never asked. Black people were never asked. It was imposed upon us. 14th Amendment. It's naturalization. Right, this so-called citizenship. Right, it's always been less than what they call second-class citizenship. Either you're a citizen or you're not. Right, either you're half pregnant or you're pregnant. I never known a woman being half pregnant. Okay,
Right on.
That's the reality of the situation. So we have never been full citizens of this country. Never have been. Right? And they don't intend for us to ever be. And so we have to devise the means for which we can begin to govern ourselves. Right? Building the People's Center is the mass popular movement. Following that is specifically for the liberation and independence of New African people. Okay.
Appreciate that you laying that out. This was an interesting question. You know, I have my own feelings on this, but I'll let you respond to it too. You were asked if you believe they, you know, meaning the state, the prison systems are making political prisoners sick. Somebody said they think that they're giving them cancer based on the compassionate release. Basically, that by the time most political prisoners get out, it is under circumstances in which they're basically in their final stages of dying, often because of cancer.
Mm-hmm. Is it deliberate? I have no documentation to support that, right? I think the conditions inside the penal system of the United States in and of itself is a deliberate form of genocide, right? And I make this point explicitly clear. Again, let's go back to our history. 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution ended chattel slavery. That ended the chattel slavery of African people in this country. However, at the same time, it instituted penal slavery. So let's understand, slavery in this country has never been abolished. Never was abolished, right? It was institutionalized into the penal system. So the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution has an exception clause in it. It says, except for those who have been duly convicted of a crime. And then they began to create laws to ensure that Black people are issued into the penal system of slavery. Slavery still exists in the United States. The penal system in the United States is a slave system. Understand that. And so as a result of that, the conditions inside prison are that of less than healthcare, food, nutrition, exercise, programs, etc., because they're treated like slaves. And those who run the system know that. Those who are in the system, for the most part, don't know because they don't know the law, right? And so they're treated as if they're slaves. Ruffin versus Commonwealth, right? U.S. Supreme Court decision, right? And North Carolina, I think it was North Carolina Prison Union against North Carolina, something like that. There's a case, I can't remember the exact name of it. In each of those cases, the United States Supreme Court stated emphatically, black and white, that prisoners are slaves of the state. Slaves of the state. So the moribund conditions inside the institution system, if you want to say it's deliberate, yes, it is deliberate, right? We have elderly people inside prison systems who are dying as a result of medical neglect and medical abuse because it's a slave system, right? We're building another campaign called Peace. I don't have to go to peacethecoalition.com, peacethecoalition.com, and learn about our campaign in fighting for the elderly inside prison, right? Elderly abuse inside prison. And that's the campaign that we're building. PEACE, the coalition. I think it's .com or .org, right?
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I'll pull it up here in a second.
Okay, good.
It looks like it's .com, peacethecoalition.com, but
Yes.
it's taking a minute to load on my. Oh, hang
No,
on.
in fact, I got it.
Yep,
I have it. In fact, I think I'm late. I'm supposed to have a meeting with them right now. I get 2 minutes, few minutes. So what we're saying is this here. Yeah, peacethecoalition.com. Okay, what we're saying is this here, right? I'd like to say that it's deliberately injecting our comrades with diseases, right? I'm saying the system in itself is a disease, okay? And so sometimes our bodies react to that and react to it negatively, and we get disease. And I'm gonna give you another example. I was lucky, right? At the advent of COVID inside the prison system, I had some attorneys, and we filed a habeas corpus petition to court, had me temporarily released because the Department of Correctional Services did not have the protocols in place to deal with COVID infection inside the prison system, right? And we had a judge that agreed to our habeas corpus, and he ordered for me to be released temporarily from prison, okay? Letitia James, a neo-colonialist mentality Black Attorney General of the United States, of New York State, appealed that decision. And in the course of appealing that decision, right, not being granted release, I got COVID, right? And I got it so bad they had to take me out to an outside hospital, had me on oxygen for 5 days, and they shot my butt up with all kinds of drugs, stuff I can't even pronounce, okay? But they saved my life. So I give a big ups to Albany Medical Center, right, for their work in treatment that they did. And as a result, I was sent back to the institution after I was well enough. And the appellate court decided, well, since he already got COVID, the case is mute. The case is mute, right? So it's not a question of the law. Let me say, inasmuch as it's a question of the law and how the law is treated, right? To maintain a system of oppression, to not allow a precedent to be established to allow people to be released from prison, whether it be for compassionate release or otherwise, right? We know that they want us to die in prison, right? And it's our campaigns, it's our fight back that allows for our comrades to be released. So we had Russell Schultz, released soon before his passing, right? We had Dr. Batula Shakur released soon before his passing, right? And we had others released. We had Sunil Okoli, who's released in his late age after almost 40 years in prison, okay? And so this is why these campaigns are so important. This is why Peace the Coalition is so important, because we have to fight for our elderly being abused. We want the medical community here in Turtle Island be responsive to the Hippocratic Oath. And the Hippocratic Oath is what? Do no harm. Do no harm. Well, we know in the penal system, in the penal slave system across this country, they're engaged in doing harm. Neglect. For the most part, many of those nurses and doctors inside the penal systems in the United States, right, are in fact infected by this aberrant ideology of white supremacy, right? And knowing that those inside are treated as slaves by law now, are treated as slaves. And so there's medical abuse, medical neglect inside the prison systems. And so this is the reason why we find many of our comrades who have aged in prison become sickly, right? Because they don't get the proper medical care, they don't get the proper nutrition and diet, right? They're under stress 24/7, 365, right? And all this cumulative effect on them is detrimental to one's health, both physical and mental, right? And this is why peace is important. This is the reason why our political prison support organizations are important. This is why we need to hail and support our comrades on the inside, right? And fight for the release.
Right on. I'm going to let you get out of here because I know you got other meetings to go to. I really appreciate everything that you shared with us today and all your time. There is a line of questioning I just want to name in the chat that maybe we could take up another time, which is just, it's basically people having a little more questions about New African political thought and, distinctions around indigeneity, why Africa wouldn't be the homeland as opposed to the southern United States and those sort of things. I think that's too much for us to get into right now, into all of that discussion you've laid out.
I would love to get in a discussion with that, about that, with any individual who has any misunderstandings, right, based upon how they've been taught to think, right? Remember, thought precedes action, right? Determining factor, right? How you think is a determining factor of what you're going to do, your behavior, right? And if you think like a colonialist, then you're going to act like a colonialist. If you think like a revolutionary, then you're going to act like a revolutionary, okay? Thought precedes action. And so for many of us, we have been documented into this idea that this homogeneity or this yeah, there's a lot to be discussed on that.
Yeah, it's another topic.
Yeah.
Big Teal, who asked that, if you had specific questions, get in touch with me. I can share Jalil Muntaqim's email address, and you all could connect off, maybe separately. But also,
Yeah.
we do have we have some other conversations. If you go on archives, where we go into some of the questions around New African political thought that people can dig into as well. But yeah, it definitely is a discussion that warrants more space than we have right here.
Let me put it this way, right? In terms of internationalism, homogeneity, I think that's where the person is leading towards, right? I'm an internationalist. Okay.
Let me pull up just for I'll pull up their original question so you could see
Okay.
where they first came from. And they said they're coming at it from a perspective of somebody who was born in Jamaica but sees
Mm-hmm.
Africa as their original homeland.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you use the term original homeland with regard to the 5 states, they said, why is Africa not the original homeland instead of the US? So that
Okay.
was the question. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great question. Because 400 years we lived in this country, in this territory. 400 years. Right? Now, I'm not saying that we're not Africans. We are Africans, but we're new Africans. Now, let me understand what we mean by new Africans. When they brought us here to this country, we were speaking Mandinka, Igbo, Fulani, Hausa, Mandingo, and various other languages of the west coast of Africa. They brought us to this country, and we miscegenated. Right? Not only did we miscegenate for the ethnic groups out of Africa, we miscegenated with the who? With the Dutch, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the English, who raped and pillaged our peoples, right? Not only that, but we miscegenated with the Seminoles, with the Cherokees, with the Creek. Like I told you, my great-grandmother's Creek. So we've created a new bloodline, right? We identify ourselves as new Africans, right? In the territory from which we have inhabited for 400 years. Okay, so we're claiming that territory. We're making claims to that territory, saying this is our original homeland for these new Africans. Now, this is not denying that we're of African ancestry. That's not denial, right? Just as I'm certain that many of the natives, indigenous of this community are not in denial of their heritage going all the way back to India, right? From where some say their origins are from. Okay. Coming back into this country when there was that great migration, world migration. I can't remember this name for it. I can't remember off the top of my head, right? And so for that reason, we are claiming what we call the Bible Belt or the Black Belt, right? It's the Black Belt. That's what you want to call the Black Belt because the majority of Black people live there, right? And still live there. And so, yeah, we're taking this. We're saying this is homeland for the new Africans and this messenger nation. And let me make this point also clear too when I talk about the world, right, and internationalism. All right, we should be able to speak to the world about the conditions of oppression, right, and imperialism. Why? Because we speak all the languages. We have Black people speak Spanish, Black people speak Portuguese, Black people speak English, Black people speak Dutch, Suriname. Black people that was colonized by the Dutch, right? And when we be able with a Pan-Africanist viewpoint, we can speak to the world and not understand in one voice once we get organized. That's usually why they hated Marcus Garvey, because Marcus Garvey was organizing in this country, Latin America, Caribbean, Africa, and also in England. All right, and this is usually why in COINTELPRO they said to prevent the rise of a Messiah. They don't want anyone who will unite us in this Pan-Africanist viewpoint, because we're going to be able to speak to the world about the conditions of oppression, right, and ethnic cleansing and genocides that we have suffered, right, for the last 300, 500 years for the indigenous people in this country. So we have to understand this history and begin to understand that in terms of this history, that we have a place in it. We cannot be wiped out of history. Right? We have to write ourselves into history by creating our own history in the course of our struggle. And so I'll leave that with that question right there. But if there's more, if you want to discuss it, hit me up and we can run through it. All right. And if you're college students, the Cotton Organization organized for us, myself, Jihad Abdul Mamid, Dequise Sekou, when he gets well, to come and make a presentation, have forums, have a panel discussion, etc. on your campus, and so we can begin to really build this thing out. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your
I
time.
want to thank you for the opportunity of being here, right? Free Palestine from the river to the sea, right? We have no choice in the matter. For Palestine to be free, we will be free. For us to be free, Palestine be free. We're in this struggle together, have a common enemy, and we have to build a common united force of resistance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Alaikum salam.